All right, we're back. Stephen Strauss here. Really excited to continue this video podcast series, speaking specifically to the impact of generative AI in marketing. And today I'm fortunate enough to have a really special guest. Wanted to introduce Jason Wagner to you guys. Currently, he is with Helist Naturals, and really excited for him to come on board. He's had a host of different roles in many organizations over the course of his career, but really is at the forefront in implementing AI technologies in a myriad of different ways. So Jason, welcome to the podcast. We'd love a quick introduction from you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Stephen. It's good to see you again. As you said, I'm with Helist Naturals now. Helist is a holding company that folks may not know, but you might know some of our brands. We operate end-to-end manufacturing and logistics on a variety of nutraceutical brands, 4 distinct DTC brand stores, white label out of our manufacturing, and we also run a multinational probiotics company. And so a lot of things going on there from consumer and content point of view. You and I met when, I believe I was with King's Hawaiian still.
That's right.
Marketing there. That was a fun ride, of course, and eternally thankful for that. I've got some experience with General Mills. And then I'm also the founder of My Remaster, which uses AI technology to video edit and create content on a training purpose for operations and manufacturing. So we can talk a little bit about that, but it's not, I don't think, wholly unlike what you do with content creation, meeting the consumer kind of where they are, using that technology to do that. So I'm excited to be here.
Totally. A lot to talk about, man. Video editing, AI, using it, right? And what is AI at the end of the day? AI is what humans do, but we just need to be able to do it faster. And that's really what it should be in the way that we think about it. But it's been so incredible to me, Jason, as I get to explore and talk to so many different marketers and learn about what AI is and the impact of like the perspective, right, of what AI could be within the consumer brand space versus what's actually being done within it. Right. Sure. I think those are like two very different, portions of the conversation. So I just want to ask, like, straight up as we get started, as you think about AI's impact, what's your take on the overall feel of the way the consumer brand space is either embracing or resenting, rejecting, right? The idea that this is coming about, right? Like, what do you think?
And maybe embracing externally, but internally rejecting because you don't understand it. There's a lot to unpack there. My perspective is that AI, in whatever way you want to define it, is here to stay. That's unavoidable. It will be transformative, right? We as brand marketers just need to acknowledge kind of where we are in that adoption curve and the capability curve and kind of be realistic with that. I think for me, and what my advice might be is, let's be wary in the short term and make sure we're using the tools within its capabilities. And if you can reflect on what that means, the exact processes you might be able to unpack with it or leverage against and how you might be more productive, I think become much more clear. I think damage can be done in the near term that far outweighs any immediate value that you might create using AI if you don't know what you're doing and if you misuse it. Here's what I mean by that. One bad client interaction due to bad information that AI summarized for you and then you presented, or one piece of bad information disseminated by your AI chatbot that you're now legally bound to could take your company down if not really understood and you don't know what you're putting there. So I would say that where we are in the kind of ability of AI to fundamentally change all things creative and all information is that we're at a stage where you must keep a human in the loop. And if you start there with keeping a human in the loop to be able to trust but verify, so to speak, the tool can be much more effective. At the end of the day, there is an opportunity, there is an impact. As brand owners, the tech is going to shift the way that we work, but it's not going to necessarily change, I don't think, Stephen, the elements that add value in our business or to our consumers, right? We still, as brand owners, as a manufacturer, as an executive, I still have to provide a product to my fans and my consumers that meets their need and provides them an experience that they're willing to pay for. There's no way around that. And so if as a brand owner, I'm still insight driven and I still really understand the consumer needs, wants, and desires of those that I'm serving, I can leverage that technology to do it just a little bit more effective, a little bit more efficiently, maybe a little bit more creatively, but maybe not. And it's just really understanding where that tech is in its development right now.
Yeah, totally. The human element, I think, is super important, especially at the beginnings of this, right? As we're all figuring out how we can best leverage it for organizations. But one other thing that I think is really interesting, you've worked for both, let's just say, large and small companies across your career.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form, like, do you feel like AI and generative AI specifically could be more of a game changer, maybe for a smaller business that doesn't necessarily have all the bells, whistles, capacities for humans that larger businesses do as they compete with more like industrial giants?
Yeah, I think it's super insightful, right? So in the world of startup, every penny counts, and you need to be scrappy. And so if I can, as an example, if I could use a generative AI to, maybe I'm not great at writing a brief. If I can use that to paint my picture, paint what I'm looking for, and then turn that over to a proper creative, I probably saved hours and a lot of dollars back and forth, right? And so I might use it to do that. I might also use it to brainstorm 5 or 6 different ideas to get a sense for what I might do. Perhaps I can save the money that I would otherwise pay someone to develop a logo, because I can do that and then redeploy those resources elsewhere. So
Sure.
dependent upon how comfortable I might be with the tool and how advanced a particular tool might be, I might be able to rethink what my cost structures are in order to go to market. And I think that's how I'm using the technologies right now, is more to generate, what are my thoughts? Is that idea actually, how would that come to life? Can I bring it to life in a way that it helps me to explain it? As an executive, I might use it I'm always searching for that perfect picture to put in a presentation, right? Sure. But I can't ever find it, and using search engine image site is somewhat of a crapshoot. But if I can create something that really just brings home the point, that's a value to me, because I can get the point across that I want to, whether I'm trying to brief or I'm trying to explain something to a peer or manage up or cross. Just being able to have some of those creative tools at my fingertips that I didn't usually have or used to have is powerful.
Totally. And by the way, I mean, it is hard to find the picture of the cat eating a piece of pizza in a spaceship that's just landed on Mars. I mean, there aren't a lot.
That's a story that you're telling. But if that's the story you're telling, you can now do that in a very interesting and fast way.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting. One of the things that I run across all the time too is as you think about leveraging AI, and I said this earlier, AI is just what humans do, but faster. Or where can we gain efficiencies in time spent? We deal with this in content all the time, right? Especially this idea of UGC style content or creator led content or influencer. How much time do we spend as brand marketers assessing who the perfect people to reach out to are versus what the actual end goal is going to be, and can they deliver against that? And one example of a metric, but as you think about it more broadly across the entire spectrum, like, are there any early metrics that you found to be helpful to like think about or track or think through as a marketer or as a business leader that AI helps you look at more effectively?
I haven't. To be candid, I haven't actually thought about that. Um, I imagine that some of the vendors that we use to, in our tech stacks on our brand stores, or um, even, inside some of my Microsoft applications, I have noticed that there are some things that it just says, hey, you want to do this, click this button. And so I imagine that my vendors are enabled in some cases, and
Yeah.
that's making life easier. And I don't necessarily know that it's happening. But specifically, I haven't thought about those things. But what that does do is it triggers a thought. As you think about, you know, AI, I think that there's an opportunity to maybe define what that means, right? So, artificial intelligence, there's roughly, three definitions of that. And the first one is information gathering. If you think about that from what is intelligence? It was gathering of information. And I think that's where the tech is right now. It goes out and looks and it gathers it all and it puts it in one place, right? And then it'll advance. And maybe we're in the period of it advancing to this, but the second stage of that intelligence is its ability to apply that knowledge,
Right.
right? And I feel we're kind of dabbling in that, and the tech's getting a little bit better. But we've all heard the challenge that it's already consumed all of the data, and beyond that, the bigger challenge is that data's dirty, right? It wasn't that long ago that there was a whole cultural zeitgeist around whether or not you could believe what you read on the internet.
Sure.
And now AI has consumed the entire internet, and we believe everything it gives us. So there's
You see what has happened with that too, right? I mean, let's be honest, like some of these fun tools with Gemini and Sora and things like that, like very neat entertainment value and the possibilities I think we all see. But from a practicality perspective, I think that's what you're alluding to.
That's right. And all this disinformation and the things that are out there that are real, the computer doesn't have the ability to tell that apart. And there's at least one line of thinking that, look, the magnification of real information is going to be dwarfed by the amplification of false information. So you're defeating the beast. And I know someone will figure it out, right? There'll be a company that figures out how to bring those things into perspective with one another, but we're not there yet. And so that leads to that final piece of the definition of intelligence, right? Which is the capacity to have abstract thought, weigh that against logic, weigh that against understanding, provide some self-awareness, overlay emotional intelligence onto that. And the technology itself just isn't there yet to do that. It could be, right? But as you start to think about creating content and meeting a consumer where they are, without that last piece, you're just making fun pictures and sounds. Like it's not going to create and engender an action or a behavior on the part of the consumer that you want. It's just fun. It's entertainment.
Yeah. So actually, I'm glad you brought the idea of meeting the consumer where they're at, because one of the things that AI has kind of promised us, and as a marketer, right, this has been something we've talked, personalization, right? Like how long has that been a focus of brands for forever? And by the way, it should be. I laugh only because it's been talked about for so long. There's been so many different ways, but honestly, AI does bring an opportunity to truly create this personalized environment or opportunity to interact with a consumer with where they're at. And I guess I'd love to get your thoughts on, like, is in knowing personalization has been talked about for so long, what are your thoughts on AI driving personalization, and how does that differ from like the traditional methods we've thought of in thinking about personalized content or personalized segmentation or just personalized understanding of our consumer?
Yeah, certainly, Stephen, the ability to kind of ascertain and compute large amounts of information about specific consumers at that point where they're consuming the information, the digital ad or the podcast or whatever it is that they're consuming, is kind of like the holy grail, right? The one-to-one communication. And we're getting these tools help that a little bit, specifically if that content and the data that you can grab and utilize to talk to a consumer is relevant to them that far down the funnel. Um, you know, you think about a famous shoe brand that is known for being on the track, delivers an ad, and it happens to be on the track is the colors of the high school that they went to, and the voiceover is in their coach's voice. Like, that would be cool, right?
Yeah.
That'd be a cool ad. And maybe we get there one day, but I don't know that we're there yet, simply because of ethical and privacy issues and things around that. And are all consumers ready for that? I'm not sure they are. And so the technology is going to test those boundaries and allow us to get there over time. But the consumer has to be willing to hear that, and we have to have enough faith in the technology to pull that together without violation before we can absolutely do that. So
sorry.
Well, what I was going to say. So instead, I think there's a middle ground, which is, as brand owners and marketers, and I mean, this is one thing we do at My Remaster. At My Remaster, we make training videos, right, for folks. We might teach you to wash your hands, type of thing. And because the technology enables us to do this so much faster, instead of going and getting a stock video of someone singing happy birthday and washing their hands, we can get for example, your employee to sing a song in your shirt. And so it's customizable content. So you get better engagement from that. But that's only enabled because the technology is allowing us to do things that we couldn't do before, because it was just way too expensive to edit everybody a video of washing hands, but it's not now. And so
Totally.
the tools can help us get to personalization, but they won't drive it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the privacy concerns, and I think those are very real, right? As are the ethical concerns and ownership concerns and everything else that's come up. So when it comes to, though, this idea of personalized content or a personalized conversation with your consumer, how do you think you balance that, right? Like, how is that balanced overall in the whole equation? And I guess on top of that, are there any risks of like over personalizing the content?
Yeah, like I don't know that this is necessarily a new question or conundrum. Like I recall it had to be 10 years ago. You and I felt like it feels like ago. Who knows if it was? We're in Austin at South by, and the conversations then were around, well, with all the various blooming of social medias that were happening around that time, right? It's like, what are the privacy concerns? And well, we can personalize this to that channel and this channel and the other channel. And so these are questions that come up every time the technology advances, where we're going to wrestle with that. To your point, like, there is value in personalization for some services and some products, and others hitting large swaths is going to work just as well. And maybe actually, here's a risk. Brainstorming, right? Here's a risk of personalization. What if my whole ad strategy is to personalize something to you, Stephen, about your life? I want to deliver, Stephen, the best possible hat that you could ever wear. I'm going to look at and I'm going to measure it for your head, and based upon everybody else's choices, this is the hat for you, Stephen. And so I deliver that personalized. And you know what you actually really wanted? You wanted a top hat. And my algorithm would have never actually done that, but your grandpa used to wear one, and that's what you wanted. I missed an opportunity there, right? And so when I did that as a brand marketer, if I go too close to exactly who you are and be too predictive towards that, you lose the consumer. You're going to lose the ability to dream in terms of what you are. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It depends upon what my business is and what I'm trying to do, what my brand is trying to bring to life. We really need to think about that. One-to-one is going to be interesting, and in some cases it's going to work, and in others it's going to fall flat. I don't know if my hat example rings true for you, Stephen, necessarily.
Well, I love hats. My wife's been telling me I need to get a haircut anyway, so I thought you were like picking up on that. Like I need to just have a hat over this mop. So that'll be cleaned up soon. But no,
it's actually there in your background.
Well, I got a cowboy.
What is that?
It's a cowboy hat, man. When you're in Texas, you got to have a little cowboy hat back there. It's just normal. We all own cowboy hats for the ride on the horse to work every day.
Yep, exactly.
No, love it. Okay, cool. So switching gears a little bit here. Let's talk about just some innovation ideas, right? And what an innovation looks like through AI overall. And I guess the first question I would have for you is like, how can AI help marketers stay ahead of the curve in what has been a changing digital landscape for as long as digital has been? I mean, let's be honest, for as long as digital has been around, it has been a changing landscape. And you can probably say that about most of the ways that marketing and advertising is done. But what are like, I guess, what are you doing personally? Like, how are you staying ahead of that curve and keeping yourself, up to date and up to speed on the ways that AI can impact your marketing journey?
Yeah. The whole thesis of actually my remaster is based on this. AI is actually enabling us to market to a completely underserved, acknowledged industry. So in training, if you're a line worker and you want to train on the quality of how this thing's supposed to come through, you would go to the guy in advertising and say, I need a video to train. And the guy in advertising going, I know these guys in Hollywood. And and then, $5,000 for a 30-second video later, they flew out a crew of 3 people. They've got craft services. They got all the lights. They got all the things. And you got a video of how to turn this machine on with the blue button. And on Monday morning, the machine breaks, the repairman comes in and he replaces the blue button with a yellow button, and you're out of video and you're at $5,000. Like, that's the problem, right? Is whole market's underserved. But with the advent of this technology of AI being able to help us bring these training videos together, we can do that for an entire segment of the market that didn't exist, because they just take their phone, they point, they click, they say, I want you to do this, this, and this, and the other thing. We run it through, and our human looks at it and makes quality checks it and does the voiceover and does the editing and puts the supers on the key objectives and does all the things, and we'll return that back to them in about 4 days. And they have a whole suite of being able to do that. So my perspective on this is not necessarily that the digital landscape is changing, but what we can do with that digital landscape because of AI, because where things were off limits to a lot of people before, we can make those things accessible. And that's, I think that's where fundamentally it'll change. There's a marketing component, yes, and the creative component for sure, new ideation and the ability even to interact with others and have consumers create on your behalf using those tools. 100% that exists. But the bigger picture is that this technology is going to enable folks and whole subsets of our companies and our businesses that have never had the capacity to have those types of content be created for them and for what they're doing. All of that's approachable now.
Totally. No, I completely agree. It's super interesting to see. In addition to My Remaster that you talk about, like, have you seen any other like things that you would consider groundbreaking in AI and in the content space that you're like, wow, this is actually like super impactful for my business? And again, not fun, not like
Yep.
need entertainment value, but like this is actually, I could see either a use case or a very specific need or like really keen understanding of, this thing could really disrupt the way that I think about what I do day to day as a marketer.
Yeah. Can I say other companies' names and products on here?
Yeah, of course, please.
Ah, great. So
Like them, we'll cut them out. I'm just kidding.
I I am enthralled by, and I haven't had a chance to dig deep into it and leverage it myself, but GoDaddy's new tool, their Arrow tool, just fascinating for what I think it's going to do for small business and the ability for small business owners to market themselves, right? Because you go out and uh, try to get a website built, and you don't know where to get the images, and I got to go get this license of Stutter Shock, and then Getty Images won't let me have that one, and but I need an image that looks like this, and how do I come up with the domain name, and what is the, and how do I do, and how do I think from a marketing small business perspective, being able to go in and say, I want to create this experience and this is what my product does. And here's a picture of it, but please, can you have it being used by this person to do this? And it helps you build that. Again, it puts at the fingertips the way that the world's communicating, right? The world communicates digitally. And so many people didn't have those exact skills because they were never trained on Adobe Photoshop, or
Right.
they don't know how to use PowerPoint to create it. But these things can happen. They don't know how to use Wix.com. They're scared of it, right? How do I get a domain? And now I can go in here and I can make my entire brand experience by using words and prompts, and I can tool with it. I just think it's fascinating, pulling in all those different pieces.
Totally. I find that super valuable too, right? We talked about like how does David compete with Goliath, right? Earlier, right? And talking about larger industries, I think that's a really effective way and opportunity to kind of seek out, a very impactful platform that can help small businesses every single day, right?
That's right.
How can I be better? How can I learn from what others learn? Because a lot of times, especially in America, right? That's the American dream. And the ideas have come for forever. Like someone could have a really great idea. So that's actually one of the things I love about the social platforms is that the ability for content to go viral, the idea that people actually get to decide what's impactful or insightful or fun or engaging across the board. We've gotten to this time where the news is always, everything's negative all the time and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting and polarizing and all that. It's neat to see, I think, a little bit different take, which is that most people in America are actually not the way that the news describes the country, And I give you that as an example, not to be political in any way, but to say like those ideas come from the real everyday people that have these ideas and want to build their business, and maybe they do have the best idea. How do they help? How do you help get them out there? Good job, GoDaddy. Thank you for
Yeah, it's a really cool tool. Like I said, I'm still just playing with it. So I don't want to hype it up too much in the case it doesn't work, but I just think the idea is fascinating.
Totally.
Another one that is interesting, actually, there's a I use this. That I do music as a hobby.
Yeah.
And occasionally we run into writing block, and by occasionally I mean like all the time. The band is like, we don't know what to do.
Sure.
There's a tool, suno.com, and you drop in your lyrics, and they could be like 3 words, and you tell it what you want it to sound like, and it'll produce for you full songs.
Whoa.
Now they're super crushed in terms of their sound and they're warbly and all these other things, but here's what it does do. If I can drop in the lyrical content or whatever I want, feeling I want to evoke, and then it spits out 3 or 4 things, as a group we can sit around and listen to me like, we really like that, and how does that go? And before you know it, the guitarist has put together a full song. And we've produced more than one just looking at that, and taking that and and then going, wow, didn't know that that's where this was going to go to. And you just take those pieces. And so for brainstorming, for generating ideas, for breaking out of groupthink, I think these tools, at least on the creative side, are going to be fantastic, right? If you have a brief, as an example, right, you have a brief, but you drop it into one of these AI tools. What's the one now that's getting a lot of press? Midjourney, I think it's called.
Claude, Opus, a few of them.
Yeah, you drop that brief in there 3 or 4 different times, you get 3 or 4 different things, right? So now as a brand marketer, I'm able to look at that and go, I really thought it was going this direction, but the total number of ideas I have generates an entire new direction that I never knew I was going to go in.
Sure.
Right? Where the traditional way of briefing and then an agency would come back, I'd get 3 ideas. 2 of them they just pitched to their other client that morning. So, right? So I really got one idea.
That's Jason.
I really got one idea, right? And so the ability now, again, I can't bring a whole campaign to life with AI, but as a strategist, as an owner, I can look at that and say, I like that direction, and then I can take that whole thing and turn it over to a professional that then they themselves may be using AI to build. Right? I saw a cool ad from Fiverr the other day. It was person right there, and it said it's something to the effect of AI kind of destroyed the way that I work, so it was something to that effect, right? To say, like, I used this, it made me better, destroyed the way I work, but that was
a positive.
The positive,
right?
And so I think that's how it's going to change the digital landscape, right? Is the ability for us to express, brainstorm, content, create is going to explode. Now, the double-edged sword on that is if you're not taking those things, Stephen, that content is being generated, and if you fall into the trap of that's really cool, let's just go do that, it's not going to work. It's still, is that hitting the insight? Is it communicating the message? Is it driving the behavior or the ask, that I want it to be driving for my brand? Is it on brand? All of those are going to become much bigger questions.
But that's the human component too that you're talking about, yeah. Right? Like, it's great that AI is in being able to build all these things out, these ideas, and help me think differently about my business, and maybe even completely restructure the way I do my business. But that's the part where you still need to make sure that it's in line with what you'd like to present as the brand, because there's a lot of things that the AI doesn't quite understand. And maybe it's some sort of internal politics or the belief system of the way that the brand needs to be represented or whatever else. And maybe those things are good. Maybe it actually causes us to test the waters. But to just, go all in or view, images of what our forefathers looked like, which we've all seen, things like that you're like, wait, like, is there an overcompensation? I think you need to be careful with it. I think that's the human element that you talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was really cool. I got an invite to a barbecue at my house from someone that I invited, from a former president, actually.
Well, congratulations.
Have you seen that one where you just type in what you want a talking head to say, and that talking head then comes as a text to you? It's like, and I can't do great impressions, but there was an orange man popped up on the screen and invited me to have burgers in my backyard. It was great. It was great.
A McDonald's burger, I'm sure. So within all that, we've talked a lot about like the creation side of generative AI, right? And like synthesized content and creating it and everything else. What for our marketers who are out there who are maybe more on the performance side or the media buying side, what are your thoughts on, how AI is at least trying to change the game from a paid perspective, right? Yeah. Whether that's the actual media buying, whether it's the ability to quickly think through content or performance content and different iterations, like different ideas. Like, what's your general thought on AI in a paid media world?
Yeah, so the buying funnels in that paid media world are going to change, right? Uh, they'll change drastically as, some of those AI bots are making the decisions for us on how to serve up, where to serve up, um, but, make no mistake, that's kind of already a thing and it has been for years. Maybe because algorithms have been driving a lot of that anyway. And so those are always more advanced than necessarily we are as marketers. Um, what I think, the way I think about it is that those funnels, the new funnels that are created, will eventually be monetized as well, right? And so
Sure.
you'll you're just gonna have to, somebody will figure out how to monetize it, like every other innovation of the last 30 years in this space, and we'll have to follow that. And that's kind of what the paid part of it looks like. But you know, wouldn't it be cool though if you figured out how to develop and deliver ads that were, I don't know, maybe you were brand owner of a clothing brand, right?
Okay.
And your
Sure.
next set of ads featured the actual person that's consuming the ad is in the ad wearing the clothes, right? And um, so they're looking at their phone, seeing themselves in this season's style, right? And what if um,
And you're not an influencer, right? So it's not like you created the content previously.
no, it's just like you. It's like I wonder if this shirt's gonna look good on me or this your style. So I go to that website, right, to look at it, and there I am wearing that, as opposed to the guy I could never beat, right? Like, because
Fair.
it never looks good on me the way that it looks on him, so I'm always disappointed. Right? You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, I
what if
get
I
it.
could? What if I?
It's a
What if
little
you could
tight
serve me
around
an
the
ad?
stomach. Yeah.
Serve me an ad on what it looks like on me for real. And what if that ad, that ad becomes serving up in my social media feed the picture of what I did last weekend, but I'm now wearing that season's clothes. And wouldn't I feel so much better had I, spiffed it up a little bit before I went out? Type of
Sure.
thing.
Well, what
That
I'm hearing from you is like the actual content, like even from a media buyer, the actual content that is being surfaced is still incredibly important. And whether that's, you show up or whether it is, by the way, I think one of the other things to be spoken to that you mentioned is like, I think best case scenario is like you show up and it's you in the clothing. But I think that the next best scenario is somebody that looks like you, acts like you, talks like
sure.
you, right?
Yep.
Feels like you or your crew or however you think about that along the way, right?
That's
And
right.
I think that brings authenticity back into the conversation. But it's
Yeah.
still important for media buyers to be thinking not just about spots and dots, but actually the content that I'm surfacing directly to the consumer.
That's right. So what you bring up there, I hadn't thought about it that way, Stephen. But you know, all of the as brand owners, we all have our bullseye, and then we have our secondary, and then we have our tertiary targets, right? And we very often only have enough money to go after the bullseye. But but what if I could actually create content, like you said, like for the different personas that and not have to um, develop a full campaign for each, or at least spend the dollars against a full campaign for each. I think that's within reach with some of this.
Incrementality. How many times have we heard about this idea of incrementality in my sales?
Yeah,
Well,
and
maybe that
if I only had 10,000 more
this
dollars,
type
I'd
of
go after
consumer.
that target, but I don't. Yeah, it's very very interesting. I think some of us that didn't go up with this tech. I mean, I use myself as the example in the clothing buying scenario, but some of us are going to find that a little creepy. And to my point earlier, like we might not be ready, so be careful as a brand, like going that deep. Some
Sure.
brands are primed for it, right? And some audiences are primed for it. And so So why not? But there's a bit of, is the tech there? Is the consumer there? Do you know what you're doing? Like
I think that last question is the most important one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you start with, I think it's a really great place to kind of, encapsulate the conversation, right? Know what you're doing. So
Yeah,
I guess with that too, Jason, we've wrapped our time. We're pretty close to wrapping our time here, and I certainly appreciate it. But any parting words for the audience? Any like last minute thoughts? Like this is where you get to drop your final pieces of wisdom.
Yeah. So first, I fully expect that you're going to cut and edit this and make me sound extremely intelligent, and I'm not
Sir, you sound extremely intelligent. That hasn't been today.
No. Look, I've shared this before in some of the things that you and I have been a part of together. That as a marketer and really as a business person, like you have a toolbox, right? And there's a set of tools. And I learned this from my dad, right? He's a contractor, construction worker, and if he asked me when I was on the job site to go over there and hammer in that nail, and I picked up a screwdriver, all day long I'd never get anywhere. And if I just grabbed the right tool and used it, that job would be done and be done very, very, very well. And so, I believe that this technology is another tool that you can use. And in some cases, it's not the right tool. And we have to be cognizant of that as business owners and champions of our consumers. The last thing is, in all of this, because it's now going to be so easy to create that content, and you're going to fall in love with the content that you create. We all do. I made it. It's the best. It's the best piece of content that's ever existed.
Yep.
Just do not forget that as a brand owner, the objective and how you win is serving your fans, your customers, your consumers. Don't fall into the trap of loving the content you create more than kind of the job at hand, which
Sure.
is elevating your brand.
Your consumers
right?
resonate with, right? That's what you're talking to. Yeah.
That is, I do think that will be one of the hardest things for as the technology actually evolves, and we can really start to use it in that way. That will be the hardest thing for a lot of us to figure out. Is like, you know what? I'm on this side because I'm not a creative. Like that's why I'm here. And there are creatives, and creatives will learn how to use the AI tools much better than I will ever. And I should trust that. I should use it to the extent that my ability allows me to, in order to communicate better. But that's not what I am, right?
Totally. Well, cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you joining us on the latest edition of The Impact of Generative AI in Marketing. Always great to get a seasoned and veteran marketer's opinion on the way AI is reshaping the marketing landscape. So certainly appreciate it and look forward to catching you again soon.
I appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye-bye.